Welcome to the Native American Archive section's 20 Years of NAAS interview series. Uh, this series features conversations with our past section chairs reflecting on their leadership and experiences. But first off, just a little bit about the section. The Native American Archive section began in 2005 when archivists at the SAA annual meeting in New Orleans petitioned to form what was then called the Native American Archives Roundtable. And on August 13th, 2005, the SAA Council unanimously approved its creation, and David L. George Shango Jr. became its first chair, helping to launch a space dedicated to strengthening tribal archives and centering Indigenous voices in the archival profession. In the years to follow, the roundtable grew in both size and influence, eventually becoming the section that we know today, and continuing that commitment to education, advocacy, and community. Through these interviews, we honor that history, and we explore the stories of those who have come before us and helped guide us to today. So with that, I'd love to introduce our guest, Jonathan Pringle. Now, Jonathan is a Canadian American archivist with over 15 years of experience across nonprofit, academic, health sciences, and government settings. He earned his Master of Archival Studies degree from the University of British Columbia in 2008, completing a First Nations curriculum concentration, and has since focused his career on collaborative relationships with Indigenous communities and culturally respectful archival practice. Jonathan began his career as a solo archivist at the Museum of Northern Arizona before moving to Northern Arizona University's Cline Library, a host site for the drafting of the protocols for Native American archival materials. In 2019, he joined the University of New Mexico's Health Sciences Library and Informatics Center as scholarly communications and digital librarian, where he managed the Native Health Database, a Mukurtu-supported research tool. And since 2023, Jonathan has served as Archives Division Director at the New Mexico State Archives. A certified records manager, he is dedicated to inclusive stewardship, collaborative partnerships, and strengthening archival practice through community engagement. Welcome, Jonathan. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you. That was sort of a nostalgic memory lane trip there.
Of course. Well, thank you again. And with that little look down memory lane, we'd love to start with just a little on your path into archives and specifically how you first became involved with NAS.
Well, that's a great question. In my undergraduate degree, I took a film studies degree, and of course, I didn't know what I was going to do with that because of, blockbuster video didn't necessarily work out. So I thought, well, I should get some experience working in a setting that might be able to apply some of the skills I was learning. So I had an internship at the National Archives of Canada, and that really opened my eyes up to what the field was. And I mostly was interested in the field because I felt like I was really well organized. I had a high attention to detail. All of the wonderful stuff with serving underserved populations and social justice and all of those things came a little later, but they were a natural fit. After my undergraduate degree, I disappeared to Northern Canada and I worked on an archives project for the government of the Northwest Territories for a few years. And that's where it really became solidified. And I thought, I need to take a master's degree in something like this. And I applied for, and I got into the University of British Columbia's program. And they had a First Nations concentration curriculum, which really helped me understand the relationship between traditional archival practice and theory and what that looks like in an Indigenous environment. I'd intended to return to Northern Canada after I graduated, but life had a totally different plan, and I ended up in the desert in the Southwest as an internship that turned into a full-time grant-funded position. And I really, through a lot of early experiences, especially at the Museum of Northern Arizona, got to work with a lot of Indigenous communities that would come in and use the resources that we have. And I really learned a lot about what these types of records were and the power that they held, and the role that I played in balancing preservation and access and ethics. So that's where I really started. When I went to the Northern Arizona University, my then boss was Karen Underhill, who was a very big champion. She would always be very, very demure about her role in everything. But she really wrote the grant that brought the individuals together for the drafting of the protocols for Native American archival materials, which when I was at Northern Arizona University, this was a few years later, but I would look across the hallway and I saw the room where that happened. And I knew that there was a lot of strength and power in that meeting and that document. And I think we all know sort of more of the current history with that and its endorsement by the Society of American Archivists and a lot of advocacy work for the adoption of the protocols. And so I became very closely involved with the then Native American Archives Roundtable. My very first meeting was at the Chicago 2011 meeting, where that was the second meeting where the entire Society of American Archivists was meeting the protocols and responding to them and sort of figuring out how they felt about it. And the profession, oh my goodness, has changed so much since then. A lot of the complaints or the concerns or the worries about the adoption of the protocols was really discussed at length, and there was a formal a response from the Society of American Archivists about the protocols that came out in 2008. So it was a really interesting time, and we've seen the profession really introduce new, younger, more interesting individuals who come from wanting to be an archivist for more reasons around social justice and equity, and that really was shaping the landscape for archives. And so it was just a really exciting time to be there. And then when an opportunity to become the chair of the roundtable at that time came up, I thought, well, this is great. I can leverage this position and really think about some initiatives that, arguably because of the Canadian part of me and the Canadian side, I was investing most of my early time as chair in exploring the intersections between Canadian and American archival practice vis-a-vis Indigenous First Nations representation and communities. And so my first bit of time with the roundtable, and please forgive me if I'm jumping into another question, but the roundtable, we were really interested in what Canada was doing with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and their recommendations or their calls to action that would later become the Reconciliation Framework in 2022 that the Canadian archival community released. But I was involved with that group in the working group with the Association of Canadian Archivists. And so I really was spending a long time trying to bridge these two worlds. And so I would present to the roundtable on what the Association of Canadian Archivists was doing at the time. And vice versa, I would go to the Association of Canadian Archivists meetings and I would say, here's what we're doing in the United States, and let's try to find some ways to kind of blend these two things together, because as we know, Indigenous First Nations communities don't see these geopolitical boundaries and borders in the same way. And so we were all sort of dealing with the same thing. And while I pause for a second, I'm just going to grab some attachments that I had that I wanted to share in the chat. But in my
Certainly.
preparations for
Mhm.
this, I found all of my notes from my time as chair, and I think
Oh, wonderful.
they need to be added to the microsite. So
Okay, okay.
swirling away these things. So sorry about that. But it kind of helps land you in where we were. So this
Mm.
here is the notes from the Native American Archives Roundtable 2016 meeting that was in this one, I think was in Atlanta. And I'm just trying to get this open, but I just want to acknowledge, yeah, Michael Pond, he was the then chair, and I was coming in as the chair after him. And this was actually the meeting in which the roundtable became a section. So
Mm.
we got the notification from Amy Carey, who was our liaison, that all roundtables were now going to be referred to as sections. So that's where that change actually happened. But I spent a long time reporting back to the group about this Truth and Reconciliation Commission and their report and their calls to action from the Canadian government. And we're just sort of sussing out a little bit about what our group could do about that. Canada had an Aboriginal archives guide that they were looking to do something with and put it into either two resources, one for Aboriginal communities and one for non-Aboriginal repositories, which really sort of speaks to what our group is doing now with the Indigenous archival training program that we have that we're really excited about, is that we're trying these two tracks that sort of are doing much of the same thing. So
Mhm.
a lot of overlap there. And we were just doing a lot of that, and then into 2017, and I'll just cut the recommendations that we had on behalf of the Canadian Association of Canadian Archivists in there as well. So that's another attachment. And when we met in 2017, it was kind of a trip down memory lane because I don't see any of these people in this meeting today, but I know that they're there in the background. But
Mm.
Ricky Punzelin, of course, was coming in after me. In 2017, we had Stephen Curley as a committee member. We had Emily Moazami, and Jennifer O'Neill was our web liaison. And it was just a totally different time. And I think the section, the Native American Archive section, has taken the baton and just gone to places I never even imagined it would go. So I just want to shout out that I wasn't operating on my own, that these were all wonderful people that were supporting me. Um, and I have the agenda and the meeting notes from SAA of 2017. If any of you were at SAA in 2017, that was in Portland. Uh, it was where we had a special session called the Liberated Archive on the Saturday, and that was specifically going to be used to have very focused discussions around topics that were presented a little bit later. The session proposals were put in a little bit later. So we put in a session proposal from NAAS to be able to put forward this session that it was a back and forth conversation between practicing archivists from traditionally non-Indigenous repositories and their Indigenous counterparts that would work in tandem. And so questions were posed to both of those groups, and the answers are actually compiled in this last
Mm.
attachment here. So again, this can all go on the microsite. Apologies for squirreling this away, but I'm a good archivist and I keep my notes. But we had a really fruitful conversation. There's actually a lot of data to mine from this discussion and the
Mhm.
notes that were taken during that. It was a very unique session for the Society of American Archivists to do. And so that was towards the end of my tenure. And coincidentally, at that same Portland meeting, I was also studying or had studied for the digital archive specialist. And so my head
Mhm.
was completely distracted and filled with all sorts of things about digital archives. But then I quickly jumped in to host the meeting for the roundtable almost right after that exam. So my head, I remember just being really distracted. But we had a great discussion. And so, yeah, hopefully these documents sort of land that context. And my
Mhm.
apologies, I feel like I jumped around a bunch. So
No,
please
no,
put me
no.
in.
Absolutely. Well, let me start by saying thank you for all these additional resources that you're providing that will be available on the microsite, providing a lot of excellent context for where the roundtable was when you came in as its chair, jumping then to the transition from the roundtable to delineation as a section, and also all of the collaboration and partnerships it sounded like you guys were involved in throughout many, many conversations in the profession. So that's really a wealth of material already. And thank you so much for sharing all of that. One additional question. We've now heard from you a lot about what your experience being in this key leadership position within NAS, like what that looked like at the time. So I'm wondering, in your current role at the New Mexico State Archives, how you're carrying forward any major lessons learned from that experience into your current work.
Well, I think I would say that my education and my drive to do what I'm doing, really the Native American Archive section was a really effective tool to promulgate or move forward with some of these things, and it was another outlet to meet with like-minded folks who were also engaged in this type of work.
Mhm.
And I'll say that 2016, 2017 in SAA, they were really starting to grapple with and really openly explore what actual inclusion and what diversity meant. There was a lot of time, a lot
Mm.
of discussions around defining those things. And we spent a long time really trying to figure out what that looked like for institutions that had non-Indigenous or had Indigenous collections. And it was just a really well-positioned time to be there as chair and kind of help move those discussions forward and anchor them within an Indigenous context. But I've carried that with me through all the jobs and careers and positions that I've held, and I think I'm an incredibly humbling. I'm very humbled by the position that I have right now because it carries with it an enormous weight to represent basically the functions of the state government of New Mexico, which has a very troubling and problematic history, one of resilience, though. It's a fascinating place to be. And so, what I try to do is really understand now how to balance my role in creating space for collections and voices that aren't really heard or represented in the public record, alongside some of the private collections we have here. But what are the boundaries in my position that I can do that still move those ideas forward? And how can we collaborate better with communities that are represented throughout the public record here at the state archives? They just don't know. And I think we rely a lot on passive discovery. And so I'm exploring opportunities for more active outreach and making ourselves known in spaces that we've never been before. Because I don't think that's anything that we've done in the past, at least that's what I can tell.
Mhm.
So I'm really excited about leveraging this position and working with my other state colleagues on ideas that work for us here in New Mexico, and we can bring that to the other states. And maybe we can see some really interesting shifts with that particular relationship. When I first joined the state archives, I went to my first Council of State Archivists meeting, and I actually put forward a session to talk about representation of Indigenous peoples in archives at the state level. And I had colleagues from Alaska and Maine and Oklahoma alongside with me, which was really interesting to get their perspectives because we had a lot of overlap. So that's what I see my role right now in sort of carrying over that leadership from NAAS to what I'm doing right now.
Of course. Uh, and again, thank you for all of this wealth of information that you've been able to share with us so far. I guess something that I'm also thinking about is the through line there between the opportunities for active outreach that you were discussing in your current role, and also the fact that you're, a member of the planning team for the Indigenizing Archival Training initiative that we have within NAS currently. What about that is really exciting you about that project, and how do you see its intersections overall with the goals of NAS?
Well, I think I mentioned it a little bit before, but I think our profession has always grappled with, do we create one stream of practice or theory or a procedural manual for managing Indigenous archives in a non-Indigenous repository, and then have another manual that helps Indigenous communities set up what are, would otherwise be perceived as more Western constructs of archives, sort of divorcing the reality of unique ontology or community structure, the way that they organize information, record keeping systems that are completely unfamiliar in a Western context. These are things that I think we had to kind of mull over and think over a little bit. So, I'm sorry, can you just repeat the last part again?
Oh, sure. Just how it intersects with the overall goals of NAS. But
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so I think that we as NAS had seen that this was a real thing, and we wanted to make sure that we were moving forward in a good direction. And I cannot take credit for the IATP. That all really germinated well after my time as chair, but I've always been sort of along for the ride to see where NAS is going. I think I've always wanted to remain connected to NAS because while I made my various moves to different environments, in particular the University of New Mexico and working in a different context there, but still loosely connected to archives, I still wanted to keep that connection. And when I was seeing what was happening with Indigenizing Archival Training program and the efforts that were going into that, and to actually be part of the planning for that, it was just awe-inspiring. It was incredible. And kudos to the leaders, past and current, who have been carrying the heavy load on that. I'm just a small bit player in that. It is just inspiring. And I know that what's coming next will really truly change the landscape for archivists who work for and with their communities. So this is just, it's just amazing. I just love it.
Well, thank you. And I think one thing I'll add to that is, we certainly appreciate how all of our past section leaders and chairs, and, we have the role of, immediate past chair. There's a lot of opportunity for involvement, not only leading up to, say, this pinnacle of leadership within the section, but long after it as well, where folks are continuing to remain involved in this work. And so, with that in mind, I would also ask just this last pair of questions I'm going to smush together here, which would be, any further opportunities or directions that you might envision for NAS in the next 20 years to come, any areas that you can see that we might pursue or, move in. And then lastly, any advice that you might offer to newer archivists, especially Indigenous archivists, who are finding their way in this work and the overall archival community.
Well, I'll answer the last question first and just say you are welcome in this profession, in this field. I think it's really revealing in New Mexico as well. We think of archivists as, having this baseline educational requirement, and they have had a couple of years of experience, and the only way they get hired is if they have their certified archivist designation or something like that. But in a state like New Mexico, which is largely rural and one of the poorest states in the nation, you really are often called to be the archivist for your community, and you might not have those credentials or that experience. And so archivists come in all different ways, and it's just really inspiring to see these individuals who are doing the work that they're doing within their communities. And they'll reach out every once in a while. And I know I've done a little bit of consulting work with some of the Pueblos and the other tribes here in New Mexico. To help them understand, but I'm always thinking about, what's really going to work best for you, rather than here's what the profession says you should do. I mean, you can blend these two things in a certain way, but I'd also say that for those that are going through the master's level educational programs, that there is space for you here. There's lots of work to be done here or wherever you want to go. And I think you can come at it from lots of different angles, but I'm excited to see lots of people that want to come at it from that perspective of writing the imbalance that has existed and ensuring that voices are here in the collections, and not only just here, but that they've been created respectfully and responsibly, and that we can provide that information to researchers who haven't had that access to that type of information when doing their historical research. And so I feel like these new professionals coming out of these programs are steering the direction of our profession, and we're gently navigating, how to balance traditional archival theory and practice within these new kind of perspectives, and that's all very exciting to me. I think we can do that. So there's space for you. And then, oh gosh, what was your first question again?
That's all right. Yeah, just and after this question, I'll invite opportunity for the audience to, throw any questions they might have into the chat for Jonathan here. But just what opportunities or directions that you might envision as, further paths forward for NAS to pursue in the next 20 years, now that we've celebrated our first.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Well, and I think the work that they're doing, or NAS is doing right now, is leagues beyond what I could have ever imagined the section would be involved with when I was chair back in the day. You have to understand that to be active in NAS and to be chair or to serve in any position where you're elected to the council, or to be chair or vice chair, to be committee members, it's a large ask, and sometimes it seems as though you are called to do things with no compensation. And I just feel like the incredible things that people do when they are volunteering to make these moves happen is just really incredible. And it comes from a place where they truly believe in what's coming down or what they want to see happen with a section. Because you can imagine that a lot of sections like this could sort of fall or fizzle away. If just that person comes in that's not really, not really connected with it, or they just needed someone to fill that position. I've seen time and again with NAS, like just wonderfully committed chairs and committee members that are moving this forward. I don't know where NAS is going to go next. I think that they are taking on a big project, but they've got really solid partnerships to help with sustainability. So I think the second round, should we get formally funded through the Mellon Foundation for this large second part of the IATP, that will really lock us into being, I would argue, probably one of the most effective and active sections in the Society of American Archivists. I just don't, I think there's no comparison. So I'm just going to be along cheerleading and however I can help move that forward in my role and take the best of what that looks like and apply it here in New Mexico.
Well, thank you again for your, significant support in this area for not only your leadership in NAS, but the future for it to come. It looks like we may have one question from the audience, so I'll just read that aloud. Uh, Hello, everyone. Okay, so it's from our colleague Michaela Locklear. So happy to be here today. It's so exciting to see some familiar faces. Cara Stewart is one of our commissioners for the NC American Indian Heritage Commission, where Michaela works as an oral historian. Oh, my apologies. I think I'm reading one of the introductions from earlier. But again, welcome to have you again, Michaela. We're so thankful that you're here. And yes, just making sure that there's not any questions that I'm missing. But
I'll
yeah.
respond to
Mhm.
Diana's comment about the
Oh,
red chili.
yes.
Um, I think it's
Uh-huh.
important to know that New Mexico, one of the biggest controversies is red versus green chili. And
Mm,
if if you don't want to take a side, you definitely go with Christmas style. But
I
I
see.
think she was correct because I would prefer red chili over green chili.
Noted. Well, thank you again. Not only for answering those fun questions here, but for recognizing the commitment, the passion and hard work that everyone is putting forward here within NAS, yourself included, of course. And as well for all those additional resources that you've shared during our call today. We're really looking forward to digging into them, and we'll have them on the microsite soon for everyone's perusal.
Great. I'm glad
Um,
I could provide that.
Absolutely. So, to our audience today, thank you again. Please feel free to join us on the NAS microsite through SAA. You can follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn and join us on Discord, all of the links to which will be available in the show notes today. Thank you so much.